Okay, let's take a look at Rommel in the Desert. Now, I've played this before. Long, long ago, I played it once. Didn't like it. Played it with my wife. Despise it. Why are you reviewing it? Well, I need something to fill the gap, and the rules to this aren't too terrible. The first thing that I dislike is the block conceit itself, which is just... I mean, one of the worst design decisions ever made, in my opinion, although obviously it's popular and a lot of people like it. It took me about a half hour to sort these few pieces out of these bags. Now, normally that would take about 5 minutes with a set of regular counters, but I have to look at every single one of these, turn it, turn it, turn it, try to match it to the thing on here. That's first problem with them. Second problem, you start stacking these, they fall all over the place. Third problem, you bump a piece, it rolls over, you don't know what its value is, because these suckers, it depends on which way they're facing to determine their value. It's just this really horrible, horrible set of factors that surround simply using a wooden block for the game. Add to that, it's going to be heavier to ship, heavier to transport, harder to deal with, and more expensive to produce. All for these minuses. So obviously, I mean, I hate block games, right? However, there might be a good game underneath the block game. And in this one, there clearly is a good game in the sense that this is kind of a classic that a lot of people like. It doesn't work out that way for me because it's just this annoying thinking game. But we'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, I'm going to go through a brief overview of the rules and in order to learn them myself because it's been about a month since I played. I have some updated photocopy of the rules that somebody made. It's more intimidating looking. It may be better, but simply dealing with photocopies is harder, and it's obviously much longer. I don't see much more information in it, so I'm going to go with the shorter rules and try to fake it as best as I can. If I screw something up, hey, so what? I'm just trying to get to something that's decent, and this ain't it. Okay, so the first thing is, I'm not even set up yet. I normally set up first, but I need to understand the rules to get set up. This is the Italian invasion that I'm going to do. Another problem with this particular game. It's got a 1941 and 42 campaign and a 40 campaign, and you can't link them all together. You can link the 41 and 42, but you can't link the Italian to it in any way that I can see. They like jump in between them. Why would they do that? Why not make a grand campaign? Well, the good thing about this is all I'm going to have to play is this little doinker 2-hour scenario, and then I'm done with this. This is not a great game for solitaire for a lot of reasons, not just because of the blocks, but blocks are a big thing. One of the biggest things about blocks is it's a way you can hide the values and strength of your pieces, you know, without using little grouping markers or without having to stack or whatever. Man, try to stack these fuckers, and they're just annoying. Okay. So you're going to have this chart here that tells you how far each unit can move. And what else do we have? Different types of units of that different type. I guess I have no idea. And then over here you have a combat table that matches up by a little pictogram. So, you know, I mean, if you're not visually capable of assessing things really quickly, this game really sucks for you. And I'm one of those people. I have trouble finding the little counters for the scenario, and I have trouble figuring out this combat table. I want a simple combat table, not one that relies on my entire visual processing center, which is one of the most expensive parts of the brain to be running to handle, you know, shape recognition. Always a hard problem, right? Okay. So one of the conceits of the block game is that the unit, the value on the top is its strength. Now, this is like the others I'm familiar with. That means how many dice you get to roll, basically. and then you're going to be rolling them against particular to hit numbers based on the type. So for example, an armor, attacking an armor needs an SF circled. It must attack it, and it'll be trying to roll hits on a 6. Whereas an armor that got to attack infantry would be on the DF, it would roll a 5 or a 6, but it would have to clear the tanks out of the way. Hitting the artillery back there, that little square indicates you can only hit it if it's unsupported. Must fire first. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. The production quality of this thing is just crap in so many ways for me. The cover on the book, you know, I'd much rather something that folds easily that I don't have to do that to. So I'm destroying it to read it. Okay, another thing you have is this pile of supply cards, which are sort of, I don't know, it's, I think kind of the key to this game, but they're kind of goofy in my mind. They're either supply or no supply, and you're going to have a fistful of these, and basically what it does is it hides your capability to do anything from your opponent. You need supply to do things, and your opponent doesn't know how much supply you have. This is a game all about, you know, hide and go seek and stuff like that. All right. So when you move, and I don't know if we have a sequence of play here. Of course not. This is an old game. The other version probably has one, but you have basically two options for types of moves. You can do a group move, where you grab a bunch of units in one hex and you can spread them out into hexes they could move to. They don't all have to go to the same place. The alternative type of move is a regroup move where you pick a hex and everything adjacent to it is able to be sucked into one hex. Now, that one hex that it's, and they can move to get there. That one hex that it's going to be sucked into cannot be solely occupied by the enemy, which means you can move into empty hexes and you can move into hexes where you already are fighting with the enemy, but you can't move into a hex where the enemy is alone. Now, do we have a sequence of play or anything like it? Oh, here we go. Alternate player turns. You have turn options, each costing supply, and the number of turns in a month is not fixed and will vary with player action or lack of it. So basically what's going to happen is you get a choice to do things, and after you get your choice to do things, your opponent gets a chance to do things. And if you both pass, you stop getting any more choices. Alright, terrain. Escarpments, marshes, and mountainous are foobar as far as I know. So you can't move through the mountain, you can't move over the escarpment, and you can't move in the salt marsh. Now the exception to that is there's little passes and roads and trails and such not on there. And that's all explained here, which you can only see if you turn the map in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense to ever play this way. It tells you what the different terrains are like, and it also tells you the supply distances that those hexes can have. So for example, a clear hex, you're able to supply, you can trace supply back to a road one hex, and then from the road you have to trace on that as well. We'll get to that when we get to supply, because I don't fucking know it. And you also have the combat effects on there. So that's your terrain effects chart, set up in a way that nobody's going to be able to read it, because generally people will be sitting across from each other, right? You know, I guess you could sit at the two ends, and then one person's too far away to see it, and the other person gets it upside down. Sweet, huh? Not available in the rule book. Okay. So, if you're okay, stupid road bonuses, right? Games that have, you know, hey, you get to move and then you get bonus movement. So basically, if you stay on a road for the entire time, you get additional movement points, but they can only be spent on the road. 4 for the main road, 2 for the track, 1 for the trails. The Axis player, except for 1940, oh joy, I got the fucking air guy going through again. Can designate one move as his Rommel move. Everybody gets a movement bonus of +1, but obviously we're playing the Italian campaign. We're not going to see that. Then after other movements complete, you can attempt to move units an extra hex beyond their maximum range, but this has a chance of disrupting them. You have a 50-50 chance of making it, otherwise you're disrupted. Okay. There's a key to this, and this also exists in some of the other block games, which is each hex side only allows a certain number of units through it. In this case, it's 2 units during a turn. Now remember, a turn is something kind of weird. It's like your chance to do something during, you know, it's your alternating turns. So you can pour more units in. It's just you have to be kind of careful about how you know, how quickly you can pour them in there. So it's really not that big a deal. Okay. When the phasing player moves into a hex, the non-phasing player may immediately retreat or accept battle. Well, retreat is this annoying set of rules over here, which we'll get to some other point maybe. A battle can continue through several turns, several months actually even. And the person who moved in is going to be the attacker. A battle hex is friendly. A battle hex side is friendly to the player who last crossed it. You have to keep track of this somehow. There is nothing in the game that helps you keep track of this. Anyway, what you do is you flip your units forward and compare them to each other. And the phasing player gets to decide which battles to fight in any given round after he takes his moves. In the first turn of a new battle, he must attack, or if he's attacking a fortress, he must attack, or if he's making a partial retreat, whatever that is. It's going to be your covering force in that case. Okay. The phasing player fires all of his battles, and then the non-phasing player does not expend a supply card to fire his units. What? Did the phasing player fire one? I don't know. It doesn't say anything about it, so I guess not. They just decided to tell me that the non-phasing player doesn't play one. I don't know if that's actually the case, but maybe it explains it in the supply rules. Who knows? Like I said, the other rules are probably better, but they're bulkier and I don't want to deal with them. Mainly because they're a photocopy. And I don't deal with that shit. Units within a battle are fired in any order desired, except the artillery must be fired first. You roll the dice. You roll a number of dice equal to the number on the counter, and that's also your number of steps. You look on the little chart, and you see if you hit the thing you're aiming at. Artillery and anti-tank can fire on any target unit. If the equivalent unit type is absent, these units are free to fire at another unit type. Jesus. For every hit you score, you reduce the combat value on the unit. Some units have stars. These take 2 hits to reduce them by a step. All hits against those units must be taken if possible, but a single hit left over on a double step unit will be wasted. So you must allocate the hits if you can. Okay, so here's what you have when it's your turn. You can take a basic turn. It costs you 1 supply, and you're allowed to make 1 move and choose 1 battle. The offensive turn allows you to make, and this is almost always what you do as the basic turn. The offensive turn allows you to play 2 supply cards, and they both have to be real supply. They can't be blanks here. And it allows the phasing player to make 2 moves during the movement phase, followed by 1 battle turn. So that's usually not terribly valuable because you're only allowed to fire off 1 hex. Chances are, if you're making two moves, you're going to want to be doing more than 1 battle or none. The assault turn costs 2 supply cards. It allows you to make 1 move, followed by double fire turns in battles of the phasing player's choice. Battles? The non-phasing player gets 2 consecutive fires, then the phasing player gets 2 consecutive fires. Well, that sounds terrible! In any or all battles chosen by the phasing player for assault turns. Now, if we look back at combat, the non-phasing player fires first in all battles, and then the phasing player returns fire in all these battles. Now, what's confusing, annoying, obscene about this is you have to set up all the battles separately and roll all the defensive fire first. Now, bullshit on that. I'm going to do each battle on its own. But, yeah, theoretically, that's not how you're supposed to do it here. Yeah. Okay. Other battles, if any, may be ignored or fought as single battle fires by the phasing player if the phasing player wishes. So this is, the assault turn gives you the bonus of firing some other battles, but here's the problem. The double fire is just horrible. It's absolutely not what you want to have happen, unless you have overwhelming odds. The blitz costs you 3 hull supply turns. It allows you to make a move in a battle turn, followed by a second move and another battle turn. Did they define battle turn? Because my feeling is that you're only allowed to hit in one. You're only allowed to roll dice if you spent the supply for it. That's not terribly well spelled out, of course. No, it allows you to fire in all battles. Okay, great. So everybody gets 1 battle turn no matter what. And that just means they can fire wherever they like. And the assault turn allows you to roll more dice. The blitz is kind of cool because you get to break through and keep going. Of course, it costs you 3 supply cards. That's a big thing. And you only get 2 turns off of it. But it might get you a lot of ground if it's done right. A withdrawal turn doesn't take supply, and you have to move along your supply lines towards a base, and you must shorten your supply network by at least 1 hex using a group or regroup move. Unsupplied units cannot make a withdrawal move, though. Hey, they're the ones who sound like they want it. The units are not disrupted unless they're retreating from battle, and they're limited to 1 withdrawal move per turn. It counts as a pass, except when used for refusing battle or routes. If you pass, well, if the other guy passes too, then the month is ended, and we move the turn marker, which doesn't exist. I don't know. Maybe there was one. Maybe there were battle markers. Seems to indicate there's supposed to be, but I don't have the blocks for them. I bought it used. Seem to have other blocks. I have everything I need for this first scenario. I haven't checked any of the other scenarios. I probably will never play them. Okay. So units can only leave a battle hex via friendly hex sides. Now remember, friendly hex sides are the ones that you crossed last. And they can never retreat to or through another enemy hex, unless occupied by disrupted units only, or another battle hex. If you can't retreat, you can't retreat. Tough shit. When you're first attacked, the non-phasing player can refuse battle by retreating. He's not allowed any partial retreats where you have a covering force. He has to use a withdrawal move, and remember that doesn't cost you any supply, and I guess it's done kind of out of turn or something. And the usual penalties for retreating, pursuit fire, and disruption are going to be in effect. Generally, retreating is bad in this game. When you refuse battle, you don't show your pieces to either player. Well, neither side shows their pieces. Well, if you have a pursuit, you're going to see some things. Once a battle begins, a player cannot retreat until his turn. He can only do it by making a group or regroup move using any turn option to do so, including the withdrawal move. However, the units are always disrupted by retreating and may be subject to pursuit fire. If you don't retreat all your units, you can retreat some of them and others on the next turn, and so on. Units leaving the battle during a partial retreat are not subject to pursuit fire, but the phasing player must engage the enemy units in that battle with his rear guard. If the rear guard is eliminated, the non-phasing player is allowed his pursuit fire, but only with units that he withheld from firing at the rear guard. So you have to keep a reserve to chase him down, which of course is never going to happen. Units retreating without leaving a rear guard are subject to pursuit fire, depending on the speed. You notify the opponent of the speed mobility class, recon, mechanized, motorized, unmotorized, of the slowest unit in the retreating group. The pursuing player then rolls 2 dice for each faster unit and 1 die for each equally fast unit. Slower units may not pursue, and the pursuing player can withhold his maximum pursuit fire to conceal his group. Hits will be scored on 4s or higher, which is pretty good odds, taken on the retreating units chosen by the retreating player. Double step units still take 2 hits to be damaged, but all hits must be applied if possible. Also, if you retreat or end up out of supply or fail a force march, you could become disrupted. Disrupted units are vulnerable. They cannot move, retreat, fire, impede enemy movement, cut enemy supply lines, or form part of a friendly supply line. They can remain disrupted indefinitely, but they're eliminated if unsupplied at the end of the month. How are they noted? I think it's like just flipping them face down, but I don't remember for sure. It doesn't bother to tell you here. Disrupted units recover at the beginning of the next friendly turn if they have a supply line at this time and are not in a battle hex. However, if they're disrupted by refusing battle or routed, they have to remain disrupted throughout the upcoming friendly turn and the next enemy turn to recover. So they're fairly easy to recover. It happens during a month. Basically, you just one opportunity gets passed. Disrupted units are routed if they're in a battle hex and all other units have retreated or been eliminated. If attacked and they're by themselves in a hex, they lose a step and must immediately retreat by withdrawal move, which is going to give them an additional disruption and possible pursuit fire. I don't know what an additional disruption is going to do to them. We'll see. If routed units cannot retreat, or if units are routed more than once per turn, they're eliminated. How do you remember if they've been routed more than once per turn? Well, turns are short. You're not worried about the whole month again. It's just a notational thing that can be very confusing. Disrupted units don't impede enemy movement. You can drive right through them if you like. Supply lines. Supply is key to this, as it should be in the North Africa campaign. Alexandria is the base for the Allies. El Agila for the Axis at all times. Some units can then trace also to a fortress. The supply line can be any length and may supply any number of friendly units. The grid of friendly supply lines is termed the supply network. Supply is blocked by impassable terrain. So, essentially your line is going to be a chain of units, and it's going to be determined by the supply range. And you just have to have units along that range. So, if you're out in the clear, the range is 1, right? Which means you'd have to move your units through the desert. Just have them all stacked up going through. However, if you're able to use roads and such not, you can leave garrisons along the way and get better supply that way. Get it easier that way. But the coast road has unlimited supply. which is to say, if you can trace along the coast road, once you make it back to the coast road, you don't have to have garrisons anymore along that path, going back to your main supply site, which is why it has supply unlimited, whereas tracks have 3 and trails have 2 hex supply rate, which means the road network is somewhat important. But the fact that you need garrisons is really the key thing here. You don't have any dumps or anything like that. The defender can trace a supply line through a battle. The attacker cannot. Keeping track of who's the attacker and who's the defender in a hex is going to be hard to do. Well, there aren't a lot of pieces, right? Hand is killing me. Supply lines can only be traced through friendly battle hex sites, however. Unsupplied units cannot regain supply by entering a battle via an enemy hex site. That is, they may enter or fire in a battle, but if they cross an enemy hex site, they will be disrupted when the turn ends. The status of battle hex sites is determined at the beginning of the present player turn, whether it's a friendly or enemy. There's an oasis here. Another couple. A unit occupying the oasis is supplied, 1 unit only, but supply lines can't be traced to it. If there's a battle for an oasis, only the defender gets the supply. A unit which cannot trace a valid supply line is unsupplied. This has no immediate effect, but any friendly unit which is unsupplied at the beginning of a player's phasing turn must regain a valid supply line before the end of the turn, or it will be disrupted. Unlike disrupted units, unsupplied units, I thought it is disrupted, can move, fight, cut supply lines, impede enemy movement, etc. In effect, the player can harass and cut enemy supply lines, raiding deep into the enemy rear by moving supplied units to an unsupplied location. These unsupplied raiders will, of course, be disrupted unless they regain a valid supply line by the end of their next turn. Okay. We got to be getting close to the end here because there just isn't that much to this game. Fortresses. Benghazi, Tobruk, and Bardia are fortresses. Boop, 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 boop. Benghazi. It's become like a cultural call word now. Special rules of combat and supply apply to fortresses. So defending units double their combat value. They get more dice. This will be all battle turns, even if the defender is the phasing player and chooses the combat. Attacking units must fight during their own battle turns, but defending units need not. The attacker cannot pass in fortress battles. They cannot last from month to month. If an attacker is forced to pass due to lack of supply cards, he must make a withdrawal move to break off the attack. So if you have an action and you're besieging a fortress, you must pay for the attack every turn. If the attacker is fighting in 2 or more fortresses simultaneously, any additional withdrawals are treated as routes. If you can't do the withdrawal move, basically. Fortresses have limited supply capacity equal to their port capacity, which is the number in the hex there. So Tobruk has a 5. For the Allies. For the Axis, it's only half that amount, rounded down. Units inside the fortress have first priority on the fortress supply. The owning player must determine at the beginning of his phasing turn which units outside the fortress are supplied and which are not. Those that are unsupplied are subject to disruption. When you capture a fortress, the new owner gets some bonus supply cards equal to the enemy port capacity. So it gives the Axis more points than it gives the Allies. Captured supply cards aren't drawn until the beginning of the next phasing turn. Good luck remembering. And only if the fortress is still held. However, the fortress can be captured and recaptured indefinitely, creating infinite supplies. No, not really. You've got to hold it till the end of the turn. So one person maximum each turn gets the each month gets the supplies, or is it not? See, I hate this turn month thing. No, phasing next turn, so you can just pop it back and forth and have infinite supplies generated by capturing fortresses on each other. Keep the campaign going forever. Okay. So once both players pass, you do a build-up interlude. First you check supply. If things are unsupplied, they go away. If they're disrupted but have supply, they recover. Yeah, well, they would have recovered anyway on the next player turn, right? Then you get 2 dice. Each player rolls 2 dice, and you add all 4 dice together. This is going to be how many resources or build points that each player gets. They both get the same amount of build points. The person who rolled lower is going to have first need to build up. You can accumulate these or spend them immediately. Now the first thing that happens is reinforcements showing here all show up where they're supposed to. And you roll a d6 for each unit as it arrives to see if it comes late, on time, or, oh look, you get a free redeploy if it comes early. It got there earlier, but you didn't know about it and it snuck into your front line somehow. Of course, your opponent doesn't know about it either, which is the more important factor probably. However, those kind of things kind of irritate me. During build-up, you can redeploy units without reference to groups. Each redeployment costs 1 BP, and it allows you to move 1 unit 2 hexes. Plus, you can get road track or trail bonuses on it, so each BP you spend, you can drive it down the road and get all the bonuses for the road and accumulate them multiple times. El Agila, Alexandria, Benghazi, Tobruk, and Bardia are all ports. As part of redeployment, you can move by sea between ports. The port capacity is how many times a unit can get in or out of that port in each turn. El Agila and Alexandria are unlimited. The other ports use their port capacity, and each time you land in or leave a port, it costs against that. Eliminated units can't be rebuilt, however damaged units can be rebuilt at your main base, basically El Agila or Alexandria, during buildup. You can redeploy the unit to base, rebuild it, and then redeploy it back into the front lines, more or less, as long as you have enough points to do so. And what does buildup cost? Buildup cost is listed here. I think this is the replacement costs in here. So 3 for most things. Yeah. 2 for mechs, 1 for regular infantry. Minefields can be built during buildup. Yeah, I never tried this. Anywhere within your supply network, it's going to cost you 15 build points. It may be necessary to save up to afford this. Minefields can be captured and have an effect for any forces defending in the hex. To build the minefield, you write it down secretly on a piece of paper, basically. If the hex doesn't have any named points, try to make up some way that you can get there, like, oh, 2 hexes east of the Rosetta, you know, or whatever. There aren't that many hexes, so it should be easy, but, you know, the technology of identifying hexagons had been invented by 85 or whenever this game was made. Okay, what does the minefield do? After enemy movement has been completed in that turn, except, okay, this is the kind of sentence structure there is here, and this isn't hitting me. But except for artillery fire, it takes 2 hits to reduce a defending unit by 1 CV. Okay. Gosh. I don't know what they're talking about. As for double strength units, leftover hits at the end of the battle are ineffective. I don't have any idea what this is trying to say, but I think minefields are not particularly effective is what it's saying. Maybe if they're shooting at artillery, they're effective. It's just, or if you have minefields, everything takes 2 hits. Oh, no, that's what it is. So the attacker's shots take 2 hits to hit the defender. And the minefield doesn't actually do any damage. It just makes it harder to hit things. Now, it takes 4 hits to hit a double step unit during a minefield, defending a minefield. So those are probably just about impossible. The defensive advantage is lost when to defending units which engage the attacker in their own battle turn. The defenders are considered to have moved out of their prepared position to counterattack. Of course, they don't have to do that. Resupply. Okay, then during your build-up phase, you're going to draw 1 or more supply of some supply cards. You return any cards that you spent in the month, plus any dummies, to the deck. You shuffle the deck and deal out the monthly assignment of supply cards, depending on the scenario. You can buy additional ones for 10 build points each. That could be a dummy. You can never have more than 16 in your possession. Care should always be taken not to reveal what you have. Okay, so normally the Axis has the initiative every month. However, the Allied player can challenge for initiative by placing a supply card face down on the table and announce the attempt. The Axis player can then respond with a supply card of his own. If the Allied supply is real and the Axis has not matched it, the Allied player gets the initiative and gets the first turn. It's basically only a 1 supply card cost. Blank supply cards just collect up in the Axis player's hands unless he wants to discard them to change the composition of the deck. What that's all meant to represent, I don't know. What the supply is meant to represent other than that you get random amounts. You know, the fact that you can control the deck to some extent, that's all very weird to me. But okay. At least it gets reshuffled every turn. So you win the game with some kind of major victory if you exit the enemy map edge with 3 or more supplied units, or if you occupy the enemy base. If you have twice as many units in play as the opponent does, with German units counting 1.5, you get a decisive victory. But this has to happen at the end of the game. You get a positional victory for holding Tobruk, as long as it's not besieged. If Tobruk's besieged and none of the other aspects take play, well, whoever has the most pieces on the board wins the game. And that's the weakest type of victory. Well, we'll get to the scenario that I'm playing, this 1940, in a little bit, but right now we'll just load up this intro. You can say I'm coming at this with totally the wrong attitude. Yeah, I so far know that I don't like the game. I've played it twice. I haven't been thrilled with it in either case. However, although I know this doesn't lend itself as well to solitaire play, I found that I've grown, that I'm able to learn more about a game when I play it solo. Sometimes enough to like it, and at least enough to almost always figure out what I don't really like about the game. I can say there's a few things that I don't like about this, but until I've kind of played it out and played with it some more, I can't be certain. And maybe I'll find actually it plays better when I'm able to dissect it rather than just sitting there kind of trying to outthink an opponent, which I don't like doing.